Oh, okay, green means go. You guys are in for it now. Hello, family. I'm so happy to see you guys, and I get to really love to say hello, family, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to get to that, but I really, truly, truly believe that you are my family, and this is the greatest times of my life, and is to be here with you guys and share with you, and it's making my heart beat really fast right now just to be up here. So I really appreciate you, and I love you all. I just want to start with that, and I'm just going to pray real quick. And I'm just going to ask, Lord, I just thank you for the opportunity to be here, Lord, to be here in front of my peers and my family and just to share tonight, Father. And Lord, I just ask you to help me to just to have the words and to keep any emotions or feelings out of what I have to say so that it just comes out and comes out straight away. And I just thank you for this opportunity. I love you and pray these things in your mighty name. Amen. So what I want to do tonight is I want to share my testimony with you. And I have before. We have some new people in the crowd, which is really great. Somebody made a comment to me. So my camp's down in the campground right now, and there's a couple there, and I really wish I could remember their names, but we've talked several times now, and they made a comment about how when they go by, the parking lot's full, and that's pretty cool. To me, that's pretty cool. You know, for somebody that they don't attend our church, but they're familiar with everybody here, and you know, they make a comment like that because that's so important. To grow God's kingdom and to see and to welcome new couples and new people into the fold. But okay, so I grew up in Ogden, Utah. I'm a city boy, transplanted, never to leave ever. But I grew up in Ogden, Utah. I grew up on the streets in Ogden, and so in my household when I was young, there was a lot of violence. It was a lot of emotional abuse, physical abuse, and there was a lot of mental abuse. Mental abuse in a way like, you know, talking down to me like I'm not going to be nothing, I'm not worth nothing, I don't know this, and and just continuous, constantly, all the time, you know. And you don't know that, as a kid, you don't know what that do to you till you get older, and I'm 53 years old, and I still battle that. I still battle that. That's how important emotional abuse is. Mental abuse. Let's see. So my mom and my sister, they suffered more mental abuse than us boys did. See, my dad was mentally ill. And I didn't know that when I was young. I didn't know. I just thought he was just mean. I just thought he was mean, and how could he, and all this and that, you know, and I was afraid of him. We all were afraid of him, but he was extremely violent, and so the physical abuse was pretty continuous and constant all the time. So all of it together, I don't know if you can imagine. A lot of us could, a lot of us can, but if you can't, imagine what that would do to a small child. I mean, so anyways, from that point on, I went through that. My mom was married to my dad for 15 years, and I could still hear her scream in the night. It really, really, really was real. I could really hear her scream in the night so many times because of the abuse she suffered at my father's hands. Well, when she finally left him, let's see. So when she finally left him, the physical abuse kind of eased up a little bit, but it came more emotional and mental abuse. That's when the mental abuse for me started, emotional abuse, because my dad had a certain way about making us want to hate our mom, you know, because when she got away, his secret got out because he was real good at hiding. He was real good at covering up the abuse. So when she left, it got so bad that I had to leave, so I started running away. And when I started running away, let's say I ran away once, and then I got brought back home again, and I stayed for a while, but once I got brought back home again, it was just, it amplified so bad that I had to run away again. I couldn't stay, I had to go. But, so my father disowned me then. My father disowned me because I told a lie about him. See, all the physical abuse that I suffered at the hands of my father was nothing to him compared to the fact that I told a lie to somebody else about him. I told a girl that I was trying to impress because she was physically abused by her father. And I really liked this girl. So I told this girl that, she told me that her dad had hit her with a coat hanger and scarred her back. Well, I told her that my dad had did the same thing to me. Well, she told my sister told my dad, and that was the last time my father ever spoke to me. In order for me to get my stuff from the house, I had to bring a police officer. But to do that, there had to be a reason for that. And so my dad's secret was out. So he wouldn't speak to me ever again. And we were never to speak ever again from that time on. And I was just going to be 14 years old. So from that time on, from 14 years old, my mom was just getting her own life. She was just moving out to her own life. And my mom didn't have a life. She married my dad when she was real young, you know. And back in them times, it was hard when my parents were kids. So she married my dad so that's all she knew was the abuse that she suffered from my father. So she didn't know how to be out in the world either, and neither did I. And I kept running to her, but she couldn't handle me. And so there I was on the streets at 14 years old, where I quickly became an alcoholic. That's all. Alcohol was easy to get. Back then, drugs were pretty simple. Marijuana, maybe some LSD. But as a 14-year-old kid, you weren't getting that type of business, but you were getting alcohol easy. And so we'd sit around, pass around bottles, and once my first summer on the street, I picked up 9 possession of alcohol by a minor. You know, and I started getting locked up doing weekends in what back there was called Moita. It was youth detention. I would get weekends there, and I dropped out. So I went. Right after that, shortly after that, I dropped out of high school because I was never very good in school, and I never had any help. You know, teachers, I never got help from teachers. I was the kind of kid to put his head down on the desk, you know, and go to sleep during classes. Nobody wanted to help me, but everybody wanted me to learn, I'll tell you, and you know, you get punished for it. But anyway, so I'll get locked up on the weekends and whatnot, and then gradually it became longer and longer, but I was still on the street. I lived for the next 5 years on the street, no place to go, relied on other kids' parents. You know, I got thrown out of more people's homes, and you can imagine when I was young, you know, because they had their own kids to raise. So, but that whole time I started experimenting with drugs more and more, you know, alcohol, marijuana, then LSD, but I was homeless. And what this did is this set a pattern for the rest of my life, even up to, not up to now, but recently. This set a pattern that I was never able to break. So I've been continuously homeless my entire life. Couch surfing on somebody else's couch. I mean, every now and again I'd work, have my own place, but I'd lose it. It's drug abuse, alcohol. So I started hitchhiking. I hitchhiked from here to Billings, Montana, from there to Lebanon, Tennessee, and that's how I lived my life. I was hitchhiking at a young age. I would hitchhike, but every time I come back to Utah, I would get in trouble. Anyways, what I'm saying is, so when I was 30 years old, I never really had any trouble. I wish there were some youngsters here so I could tell them where are all the youngsters at. So I could tell them how quickly and how easily, because I used to be a good kid too, until I caught my first tobacco charge, possession of tobacco by a minor, and got a record. Started just that easy. Then got my alcohol charges, started building up then. Then I got caught with some marijuana. And then I got caught with a little bit of methamphetamine. And this is all over a period of time before I even turned 30, but I never caught any of my first felony until I was 30 years old. I just had my son, but I was drinking, and so his mom left me, and I got caught. I quit my job, and all I wanted to do was babysit my son. But after a while, you got to still pay the bills, so I started selling dope. And I got caught with just a little dinky bit in the corner of a bag of nothing. in my mind at that time, I didn't think it deserved a 0 to 5 in the Utah State Penitentiary. But the judge did, and that's what I got. And so they sent me to prison. For the first 18 months of my son's life, I was there. I taught him how to walk, talk, kick a ball, stomp in the mud puddle. But when I went to prison that first time, I never seen my son again. Not because I couldn't have, because there was a time when I could have, but I was caught in my addiction. And I caught my first felony at 30 years old. Now, when I went to prison, the population was way younger than me or way older than me. There was no middle. You know, there was very few guys my age going to prison at 30 years old, catching drug charges. You know, but I just all that time, all the way up to there, I never did anything in my life that meant anything. You know, I had my son, but I abused that by being selfish, by choosing the only life that I knew over my son. But I didn't know how to love. There was no love in my house when I grew up. I didn't know what love was. I thought I knew what love was in my heart, but I didn't. I have a distorted view of most everything. So all I knew was how I thought I wanted to be loved, and that had nothing to do with what true love really is. So I didn't know how to love my son. I only knew how to hurt inside. I only knew how to hate, or what I thought was hate. I only knew how to have these chips on my shoulders. I only knew how to self-destruct. So I got out of prison, and I could have seen my son, but I violated, and I went back to prison. And from that point, long story short, I went to prison for the next 11 years. 5 times I went to Utah State Prison. For drugs, possession of drugs, for burglaries. I became a thief. And every time I got out of prison, to support my habit, I did something worse than I did before, that I never thought I would ever do. In fact, when I was robbing storage sheds, I remember being in a storage shed thinking, I can't believe I'm here doing this. I can't believe it. You know what I mean? Because that's what I did to support my habit. I didn't know how to pay bills. I didn't know how to. I was state raised and educated. That's all I knew. I've been institutionalized since I was young, because that's where I did my best, was in prison. So that's where I got my diploma. That's where I worked. That's where I slept. That's where I ate. That's where I got paid. So it was my world. And I gradually became used to that over the years. You know, the state groomed me to be a convict, and I was okay with it. I was okay to go to prison. The first time I went to prison, 30 years old, I was scared as a young child, scared to death. My hair fell out. All my hair fell out when I went to prison the first time. And that's for reals. I'd wake up in the morning and brush my hair off my pillow because I was so scared to be there. At 30 years old, grown man in prison with some real dudes, some real guys. But after that, prison became easy. Prison was nothing, and prison was where I did my best, and prison was where I was safe. And prison could be credited for keeping me alive this long. Because when I was on the streets, I did everything I could to not be alive. Not even care, not even give it a second thought. I didn't care about the people that were around me. I didn't care about myself. I just had this big broken spirit and hurt inside of me. And I didn't know what to call it. I thought it was hate. I thought I hated my father. But because how could he? You know, how could he do the things that he did? But I didn't know my father was mentally ill until I went to prison, probably the 4th or 5th time. Because when you go to prison, you get therapy, and you get counseling, and you program, and you go to school, and you take drug classes and all this business. And I found out that I'm a textbook child. I'm a textbook child of the system. Everything that you read about, everything that people tell you about what drugs and alcohol do and how a kid becomes this guy right here, it's all in the books and it's all textbooks, and we've all heard it. Every one of us have heard it and read it, and it's all true. Every bit of it is all true. It all starts at home. It all starts when we're young. But anyways, where was I at? Where was I going to? So prison 5 times, because that's the only place I was comfortable, because I couldn't make it on the streets. I couldn't stay away from drugs and alcohol, because I carried this big pain inside of me. But by then, all this pain and hurt that I supposedly felt or suffered, that I had no name for, now it's shame and guilt. Now I feel bad for everything that my dad did, because I've done every single thing that that man did. I've been an abuser. I've been an adulterer. I've been emotionally, physically, and mentally abused women, even children. You know? There was a time when I couldn't say that to you. There was a time when I would have hid behind my shame and guilt, but that time's no longer. I'm not that man anymore. So now I've got all this shame and guilt to deal with, right? And I finally get out of prison for the 5th time. I've done 11 years. But nothing's changed. I'm still homeless. I'm still a drug addict. I'm still an alcoholic. But now I'm robbing. I'm thieving. I'm breaking in and stealing people's stuff. All to support a place to live. All to support my drugs and my alcohol. Because at my age, then, and this would have been, the last time I went to prison was in 2014. So what was that? 10 years ago, 9 years ago. Got arrested for breaking into storage sheds. Somebody was disgruntled and lost their storage shed. I'd pay for their code for the security gate. And I'd go in them places and I would cut all the locks off and I'd put my own locks on. And then I would just go in there at my own convenience and back up to some stranger's storage shed and cut the lock off, or open the lock because I had the key, and unload all their stuff. That was me. That was me. Still homeless. Still in my addiction. Still going to jail. Been arrested 47 plus times since 1997 for everything. Drunk in public, possession of drugs, disturbing the peace, driving without a license, driving on no insurance, driving under the influence. I mean, how arrogant is that? To get behind the wheel drunk and take everybody's life in your hands. That's arrogance. Anyways, that's who I was. That was the guy I was. Up until, that's how long I've been on the ranch now, for going on 3 years. November 21st, I'll have 3 years sobriety for the first time in my life. I won't trade it for nothing. Because this is where I found God. This is where I was saved. In this church, with you people. This is where I gained trust. This is where I was loved. This is where I love. This is where my life began. About 2 months ago, my son texted me. Got a hold of my mom, who I started talking to for the first time probably 5 months ago, 6 months ago, that I didn't speak to for 40 plus years, because I blamed her for abandoning me. But that's how distorted my views was. My mom didn't abandon me. My mom didn't know what to do. My mom was trying to figure out her own life. But God restored that relationship in my life. And I'll tell you what, if there's a loved one that you know that you're not speaking to, stop it. Stop it. Call them. Because after 40 plus years, when I heard the sound of my mom's voice, I realized that none of it meant nothing anyways. Because I recognized her voice right away, and I knew right at that spot that all that stuff, it was saying, it was the devil, it was keeping me from my mother. And now my son turned 21 on Cinco de Mayo. And I've never felt like I had the right to reach out to him because I never did anything to try to be a father or a friend. You know, but now we talk. And it's not crazy talk, and we're not talking every day, but the door is open. The door is open. I want to tell you why it's so clear to me that this church is real and that Jesus Christ lives inside of me. Sorry about that. Lives here because this is where I found him. And this here, what we're doing here, fellas, what you're doing here, this is simple. This is easy. There's nothing here. The world's not here. The world's out there. The world's where you're going. You know, the world's not in here right now with us. You'll never have this time ever again, and for the rest of your life, this time to put into Christ and you. Never again. Since I've been on this ranch, and I'm never leaving this ranch. I'll tell you right now, I will never leave this ranch. I will never leave this church. I will never leave you people. I won't. I already know. I already know because I've been homeless and I've been unloved. And I'm not homeless anymore. And I'm not unloved anymore. And I have 3 years sobriety coming. And it's crystal clear right now. Jesus Christ lives. And the devil lives out there in the world and waiting on us. And if you're here just to stay out of jail, and I'm not saying anybody is, but the world's still out there, and the world's still out there, and you're going back to it. So you have to try as hard as you can. You have to get as much as you can. You have to love God as much as you can and as hard as you can before you go back out there. I ain't stupid. I'm never going back out there. Never. Nothing wrong with knowing who you are, knowing what I'm capable of, and I know that I cannot make it in the world, and I'll never leave here. So you go get up, you go out every day, and you give back, and you do the best you can. And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Because here there's no room for selfishness. There's no room for self-centeredness. Because here we're a community. Here we support each other. Here we love each other. And here we do all we can to make that happen. So I love you all. That's just a little bit of what I got to say. I'm so happy to be here, servants of God. Servants of God, and allow me to be a servant of God to the best of my ability. I'm still learning too. You know what I mean? But I mean, my life is great. I have everything that I need. I want for nothing. I get to get up every morning and see God's beauty all around me. You know, prison walls all my life. I've been locked up my entire life. From when I was a kid to a grown man behind bars, behind walls. And I'll tell you what, if there's any youngins here, you don't want to go to prison. You don't want to go to jail because you do every second. You sit behind them walls and you know every minute that passes. And when you have to do 3 years of every minute that passes, there's nothing like it. It's horrible. It's horrible. But I have no walls now around me. and I never will again. I will never go back to jail again. I will never get arrested again. I'll never drink or do drugs again. And that's how simple my life is, and that's how clear it is now. And that's how black and white it is. There's Satan, the world, there's Jesus Christ. We're saved over here, and it's not hard, and it's not a big decision to make. We ain't those people that we used to be. There's no guilt, and there's no shame. And if you're living in guilt and shame, and if you're apologizing to somebody on the phone still at home, then you got to stop, because we're not there no more. And it's that easy. Josh told us. Remember, I used to come here and I'd pray for my shame and guilt. But I was broke down and busted with it. Couldn't get it off me. Couldn't shake it off me. And it was as easy as saying, I'm not that guy anymore. And anybody in your life that's saying, that's still bringing it up, then you can't talk with them no more. And you got to tell them, well, I can't talk with you no more because I'm not that same guy. Can't never get under it or out from under it if we keep living it. So that's how easy it is for me. So anyways, I used up all your time. I love you guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Did you hear that, guys? You would think, some of you that met with me the day that had a hard meeting, you would think that me and Jack conspired to tell you the same thing to where it would be confirmed. Jack, have we talked about what you're going to say tonight?
No.
Yeah. We haven't talked, have we? It's just amazing how God works and how he confirms himself. And when you have a confirmation from God, in other words, confirmation is, I've heard it from two different people in two different places, and I heard the same message. And you got to say to yourself, maybe God's trying to tell me something. Amen? So there you are. So anyway, thank you, Jack. Jack has become... he told a story of at some point early, like in 8 or 10 years old, he had this dream to one day be a sheep herder.
Yeah, it's no coincidence. No coincidence. It's part of building my relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So there you go. That's how God works. So now, I guess you're a sheep herder for life now, brother. What? He's never leaving.
Don't give yourself that sentence.
Hey, from where my will was to where my will is, it's not a sentence, it's a statement.
Anyway, thank you for being here this evening. Isn't it wonderful to come? You just miss, that is so much that you've missed if you wasn't here. Some of you listening on YouTube or whatever, you're hearing it, but anyway, for the ones who didn't hear this tonight, you have missed a blessing from God and a confirmation of his work. So be here, amen? Hey, you missed something when you're not here. So we'll see you on Sunday, okay? All right.